Meeting of the Memorial Boulevard Building Committee, special meeting, to order. And the first order of business is approval of the minutes of our August 9th meeting.
So moved.
I wasn't here, so I can't vote.
Mr. Keith, the last meeting.
All right, motion made and seconded to approve the meeting of the August 9th meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? So moved.
Mr. Chair, as a special meeting, never mind.
Anyone in the public like to make a comment? No public comment. Now you'll ask.
Mr. Chair, if I could ask, if you would entertain a motion to move item number 5, update by the construction manager, prior to the project update by the architect.
I would entertain that.
So moved.
Motion made and seconded to move item number 5 on the agenda to be next in line. So that's a project update by the construction manager. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? So moved. So with that, we'll have an update by the construction manager.
Thank you very much. Let me introduce myself to those of you who I haven't met yet. I'm Carrie Kratz. I'm the Vice President of Operations for our Blvd Building Company's Connecticut office. Mr. Eric Cushman, the normal face that you see, our project manager, sent his regrets that he was unable to make it tonight due to a conflict. He did send me with a brief update. There's minimal activity going on right now for the construction manager, but we are still engaged in working through some items. Over the last approximately 30 days, Eric has met with Kent McCoy, the city of fire officials, building officials, and has done a review of the proposed scope of the work. Eric has also met with Kent McCoy Edwards to review the progress of the design of the project. In addition to that, he would just like to say that the next scheduled activity for us is the design development estimate, which is currently in process with the design team, and I will defer to the design professionals to speak to the design schedule. At this point, with that amount of minimal activities on our plate right now, I'm open for questions or comments or further action items that I shall relay to Mr. Cushman.
I guess the big question is, what is the current date for that cost estimate?
So as soon as we receive the design documents, we will proceed with the estimating effort. Can I defer to,
please do.
to the design team? I believe they're prepared to speak to that next milestone as the next actual estimating activity that we're going to do, and the delivery of those documents.
Sorry, once you receive that from them, how long does it take to do the process?
So for us, this design development should approximately take between 2.5 weeks. There's a little bit of a reconciliation effort that has to happen, that we have a tendency to like to make sure that we get everyone sitting around the table before it's presented, to make sure that all of our assumptions are correct. So it's usually 2.5 weeks for us to do the exercise, and then usually accounting for a week to a half a week of meetings and preparation. Once we receive the documents, of course.
Any other questions? Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey, you wouldn't happen to have a card?
Oh,
so
yeah,
I remember,
absolutely.
My memory.
Sure. Anybody else?
Sure thing. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, we're moving along then. A project update by our architects.
guess maybe before I get into the drawings, I can address the issue of schedule since you raised it, Frank. We had completed a schematic design package some time ago with the directive of a greatly reduced number of seats for the auditorium. Since that time, we've revisited that schematic on 3 different occasions with 3 different seat counts being proposed. As the meetings became open to the public, the overwhelming opinion of the public was that the higher the seat count, the better. At our last meeting, I said, fine, but understand what the amenities are that you give up if you want to keep that seat count up in the 900 area, including a ticket booth, a lobby, toilet rooms, all the things that you need to operate as a theater, and then to right-size the design. So really, in terms of design development schedule, we don't have an approved schematic as yet. We had one, but we've done it a few times. If we have a conclusion tonight that this does represent a revised schematic, and I've got a couple of schemes to show you, then we can move right away into design development, and we'll be back on, however many days we had in the schedule for the design development process. We'll get on that, but we actually are, redoing the schematic. The other thing that I'll talk about a little bit in tonight's presentation, actually quite a bit, is the issue of parking, which is an important issue. And our site consultant and I met with the town planner and town engineer, and also the fire marshal was there, and talked about the issue of parking for the building. And so the number of seats has a direct impact on the number of required parking spaces, and you have a very small site that can't accommodate them, but I'll show you that in detail as we go into it. So shall I just launch into the drawings?
Yes, please.
Okay. On the screen here is the existing condition. So you've seen that before, and you can see in the lower right-hand there, I know it's a little difficult to read, but the existing is 986 in the auditorium. So that's the...
Thank you, Mr. Rose.
All right. I don't know what's happening exactly. All right. Try that again. I was trying to use the laser pointer, but I won't do that again. So yeah, 986 seats you can see on the lower right. The second floor of the auditorium is where the so-called stadium seating starts, rising from the second floor all the way up to the third floor, with the tiered balcony seats right around the opening to the floor below. And then the third floor, that just shows the stadium seating coming up to the third floor. So that's your existing condition that's producing the 986 seats. This is the 800-seat option that we talked about. The area colored in yellow is one renovated existing classroom plus a small addition adjacent to the stage in order to get a loading dock, a green room, handicapped accessibility, costume storage, 2 dressing rooms, and men's and women's toilets, handicapped accessible toilets in that part of the building. The rest of that scheme, as you've seen before, you enter in that main stair or by elevator, and you come into that semicircle lobby. To the left is the ticket booth, to the right is a concession area, coffee, wine, whatever. There's a coat room also to the right, and then a flight of stairs down to the parterre aisle that runs from left to right at the back of the auditorium, and then the seats forward of that. In this scheme, this is the 800 seat scheme. We've reused the existing theater seating, but just relocated it so that you don't get an aisle right down the center where your best seats are. You get seats there. So we've relocated existing seating. And whether that ultimately budget-wise becomes existing seating or new seating in the small size, we can test against the budget, but that's where we are in terms of the seating on the plan of this floor. On the second floor, again, you come in the main lobby from the stairs. You've got sort of a half-circle area for concessions. Again, wine, coffee, bar, light snacks. The stadium seating remains. Again, new or existing seating, but not large seating, not per today's standards, the old-fashioned size seating, with seating in the front 2 rows of the balcony, and then cabaret-style seating on both sides with high tables and chairs. So this, and I'll show you the third floor, the stadium seating completes itself, and then we're showing a tech deck at the very rear, up high at the projection booth level. Since the room doesn't have any catwalks, it'll be important for legitimate theater to have that additional space. So that's the 800-seat scheme. Then I just went back in and said, these seats are 18 inches wide with 30 inches aisle width. The standard today is more like 22 inches wide with a 36-inch aisle width. So I went back into the plan and laid it out a second time because there was interest among the theater committee in having more comfortable, more modern seating. This shows the first floor with the 22-inch by 36-inch space per seat, and then the stadium seating, again, redone to allow for larger seats on that stadium area. Of course, we can't increase the aisle width because that's set by the steps of the stadium, but we can increase the seat width. The front balcony is laid out with the wider seats, and then the cabaret seating remains. No change to the concession on this floor. And then on the third floor, the seating completes itself. No change to the tech deck. And this scheme ends up being 646. Sorry, I can't quite read it myself. But it's roughly 650 seats. So it's really the change of going from the small seats with the narrow aisle width to the wider seats with the deeper aisle width that causes the seat number to drop. We could fine-tune that to any number between 646 and 800 because you could decide, well, we will do the new seating on the lower level only and use the smaller seating on the upper. So we can hit pretty much any number you want in between those two. But this shows as much of the wider, longer seating as we can get and the impact on seat count. But without any change to, we're not demolishing any of the stadium, all of that remains.
Just a comment. At our last meeting, we agreed that we would look at somewhere between 750 and 800 seats.
Right.
So now to...
So the first scheme I showed you is the 800.
Correct.
And we could get it to 750. We could get this scheme to 750. We just wouldn't be able to replace all the seats with the wider seats.
So with your last schematic, you utilize all wider seats.
Right. So if we do a mix in between, we can hit a number that you want. So say 750. But that brings me into the next part of tonight's presentation, which is the parking. Per City of Bristol zoning, you need one parking space for every 3 theater seats. Here's an aerial view of your site. You can see there's parking on both sides of the building. Willis Street running along the back and the ball fields and park in front. And so it's quite hemmed in. you have park on one side, Willis Street on the other, and then the two areas for parking. We asked our site consultant to generate as many parking spaces as he could on site, and this is 141. Now, after we met with, so 141, and I'll go over the actual numbers with you with the hard copies when we've got the lights back on, because this isn't quite clear enough to read. But 141 does not meet the parking requirement that you would have for the theater. So then when we met with the town engineer and the town planner, there had been some talk about restriping Willis Street and allowing that to be included as parking for our site. And that's what you see in this scheme. You can see Willis Street now has nose-in parking all along the side that comes up to the back of our building. But also in this scheme, one option in order to get you near the number of seats that you would need for a 700 or 800 seat theater is parking lot in part of the ball field. So that, I think, probably is going to just turn a lot of people off. So I guess the conundrum is you're stuck with a site that can generate a certain number of parking spaces. If you didn't use that number to generate the number of seats you're allowed, it's a much lower number than what we've been looking at. We looked at a number of schemes. It's this one where you're just parking along the side of the street there to the left in the park, not invading the park itself. This scheme, same thing, you've got nose-in parking on Memorial Boulevard, again, not invading the park itself, or at least not very much. This scheme where you do 2 rows of parking on one side of the park, move it to the other side, and then that's it. So we came up with a number of scenarios to kind of max out parking, knowing that that's going to be the driver in terms of the number of seats. We had spoken with the town planner also about the notion of calculating the parking requirements for the business use of the building, which would be everything but the theater, versus the theater requirements. If you add them together, it gets to be a pretty hefty number. It gets to be upward of or close to 500 parking spaces required. We talked about possibly being able to not have them added together, but keep them separate, with the notion that the use that happens during the day, the so-called business uses, are packed up and gone on nights and weekends when the theater is in session, so that you wouldn't have that overlap of parking. They're amenable to that, depending on what the ultimate use is of the balance of the building. So that's one option. The other options are to discuss, that would be at a much higher level, other sites that are available, like the Barnes factory site across Willis Street, but we can't count on that. So I guess what we've come to you tonight with is a bit of an issue. You've got a small site that only generates a certain number of parking spaces that falls way short of the number of seats that you're looking for in the theater.
How much parking is in those 2 lots now? What's the number?
As shown there, in that first scheme, that 141.
And how much would you get if Willis Street closed, do you know?
You'll only get, I think it's another 30.
If Willis Street closed?
Yeah.
I believe
totally.
going single lane, which is currently what it would be, would gain another 40 spots. That would put us at 181. It wouldn't make sense to entirely close the road and use the entirety for parking, because it would cause actually having parking spaces on both sides would actually come up with a lesser number, depending on how it were configured. So 40 seems to be the max that you'd be able to get out of Willow Street, whether it were single, one half of it, or both halves.
Now, was the option of parking on the boulevard? I mean, we've got 2 lanes, which I understand will be going to a single lane in either direction, sort of a temporary parking permit, so that if there is a sizable event going on in the theater, parking would be allowed. Have you investigated that potential? Or?
Well, the requirement that we're dealing with is for so-called off-street parking. So we didn't talk about that with the planner, but that may be something that they would consider. Although based on what I'm seeing in the site drawings, even when you kind of nose in, like that or like that, you're not generating a lot more parking, nowhere near what you'd need.
On the boulevard, you mean?
And
Right.
maybe I can comment and add a little bit of dialogue to it. We did meet with the lieutenant for the traffic division in the police department, and the reaction that we got was less than favorable, primarily because directly where you're talking about on-street parking is where they're talking about putting the bike path that's already been approved, which will be coming up and down Boulevard. So you kind of have to, you'd be parking directly where the bike path is supposed to be. It becomes problematic. Doesn't mean it can't happen, but we did get a reaction from the traffic division that was less than favorable.
So realistically speaking, we're saying that if we can't add a parking lot, you can't get to the 700 or 800 number,
Right.
much less 900.
Right.
If we can't add a parking lot, even if we could park on the boulevard, and if we could park on is it Willow Street?
Yeah.
Willow Street.
Yeah.
It's not going to get us anywhere near that.
Well,
so we'd have to entertain now constructing a parking lot and adding to the cost of the project to do that.
At this point, if you have 141 plus the 40 on Willow Street, that will give you a maximum of 540 seat. To get to the 750, you're missing 200, so that's 600 parking. That's a lot of parking.
Yeah.
Is there any way to get a variance?
You know, there might be, but I think Bob Flanagan.
Flanagan.
Yeah, his opinion was, let's say you got it, and let's say 300 cars show up for a performance, then what?
And they park in bars.
Right.
Is that what we're doing now?
Yeah, if it's Barnes's.
Yeah.
I mean, we know from experience in Connecticut that next week Barnes may not be there, and the next owner may
not
take up all the land or whatever.
Right.
However, the 646 seats you had talked about, the current full-size seating, would require about 215 parking places.
Right.
And so what's your maximum guess now? Or potential?
Let's see, I wonder if we should turn the lights back on and get back to the hard drawings, since they just haven't memorized all the numbers. I'll have to read them off the drawing.
While Dave is turning on the lights, the numbers that we do have that Toke Design that's working for Ken came up with was 141 on reconfiguring the existing parking units. By moving on to Willow Street, that is another 40 parking spaces, so you have 181.
And that will allow 540 seat.
That's correct. So I guess the question then becomes for us is, what would the planner's reaction be for a variance for, at that point, to go from 540 to 646? That's roughly another 30 or so parking spaces that you're short, which is still considerable. It's not as large as it was before, but it's still a considerable number.
And I don't know, how you want to negotiate that, with the planner, with the city.
And if you get a variance, and then the people show up, as was pointed out, and we're planning on that parking at the barn site, and the barn site is no longer available, we have no place for all these people to park. Right? So they have to...
Would it be...
We got to do something that makes sense here. We want this to be a first-class facility, and we're not going to provide adequate parking. Maybe we should entertain adding a parking lot.
Where?
I mean, we're spending all this money anyway.
The ball fields, I would suggest, at least off the top of my head, that this athletically intense community would probably not be too supportive of usurping some ball fields.
Then maybe you got to go through a city. I mean, you can't build something that's not going to work.
And I agree.
You can't build something that's not going to work.
Now, certainly looking at other areas, I mean, there's the auto parts store. Could we work a deal? But then how long? I know the gentleman who owns that store is beyond retirement age, so it could up and sell again next week. So I take it there's no other city property in the area?
There's nothing in the immediate area that the city owns that would be amenable for doing that, no. Not to the size that you would need.
What about the school in the area that have the parking, and we just stipulate that we're going to have a shuttle box, a shuttle bus? You see that in the van all the time. They bring people, they're in a van, they bring people to the parking.
That satisfies the zoning regs?
Maybe that will satisfy a variance that way. What's the nearest school?
Well, probably the closest property is across the street.
Currently, that probably would make more sense, is not go to a school, but go to the Center Square property.
That might disappear too.
It may disappear.
Well, I mean, the property won't disappear, but the need for parking certainly won't disappear.
Depending on how well administered the shuttle program is, that may or may not be well received.
That's correct. That's correct. Go to a theater, park off-site, and take a bus.
Take a shuttle bus.
Yeah, right.
Take a shuttle bus back. After you spend a significant amount of money on your tickets. Even with parking, you go down to the Bushnell, they don't have parking, but there's parking in the area, and it's within walking
correct.
distance. You don't have to get into a shuttle bus, or so it's there.
State-owned parking.
Right, it's all state-owned parking, and it's available. But
Jack.
That's a great idea.
Jack, you may want to go up.
Oh, sure. I'm happy to. Jack Ferraro, 24 Sherwood Street, Bristol, Connecticut. That's a great idea, the shuttle idea. But also, there are some lots on this corner. The old car dealership that's been empty for years. The blue building on...
Chick Miller.
Not Chick Miller.
No,
that too. We have Chick Miller's, which is just down the street. But where the monument is, right around the corner where Shaw.
Oh, right.
Where Shaw's Automotive is. There's that old...
The old Chrysler... Dodge, right.
That's been empty for years, forever. I mean, what if that... I mean, that's a sizable piece of... It was a car dealership. Just thought. I mean, there are some lots out there that
So
have
it
been
could be
empty.
property that we could purchase and pay, maybe not even.
Whatever, because it literally has been vacant for years.
Yeah.
And we use it for festival and everything else every year because it is great.
You know who owns
Have
that
it
though?
there. Huh?
You know who owns it?
I think it was the old Dodge. It was the old Dodge.
Right.
But it's been empty for years.
It's supposed to be a billiards parlor.
Yeah. And I gotta be honest with you, in the evenings, all those factories are empty too. I mean, they let us park there for festival all the time. You just gotta ask them. So I mean, I think there's some opportunity on Riverside Avenue to look at it.
Yeah, because it will go.
Just a thought, that's all. Just take a look at it.
Walking distance will be better than the shuttle bus.
Yeah, it's,
Well, that's another story altogether. We won't be able to give direction to this gentleman here tonight. We investigate that.
well,
If you want to pursue that, if you want to pursue that a little bit, we have to pursue it. They can't do anything until we come up with the answer, because it's going to be somewhere between 5 and 40 if we can't get any more spaces, back to the 800.
The first step would be to get the variance though, wouldn't it, from the zoning?
I don't know how you can get a variance.
We have
Well,
a zoning board member here.
You want me to sign a vote?
No. What do you
What do
think?
you want?
I mean, you've done this before.
We haven't given any variances. We've required people to have the parking, and in cases where they were using parking from another area, they required a signed agreement that they were going to have this, because we don't want to get into a situation where if the other property is sold and then is no longer available, then it's a problem, because now there's not enough parking. So we've required contractual arrangements. That's been my experience in the 3+ years I've been on the zoning commission. That, maybe something else has been done before I got there, or maybe something could be done afterwards.
So we're talking long-term agreements. I mean,
Or going to look at the Riverside Avenue properties to see what's available. I mean, the buildings that have been empty for years. I mean, maybe there's
No, but,
maybe there's an opportunity there.
purchasing another piece of property and taking it off the tax rolls, I think may not go too well either.
Probably may not go over
That may not go over too well.
Well, yeah, okay.
But I agree. We've got to look at all the options.
You got to look at all the options that are out
Absolutely.
there, and I agree. If you're going to spend this kind of money, okay, on a project, then do it right. Or don't do it at all. I mean, if you can't do it, you can't do it. It's a shame not to be able to support the 800 seats theater. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. And off-street parking, I mean, we just went to the Palace 2 weeks ago, okay? And, it was mobbed. And we had if you just found parking, I mean, on the streets, UConn is across the street, but as long as they let you use the lower lot, you can't use the upper lot, but it only holds like 60 cars. So, I mean, there's opportunity. And we just think out of the box like the shuttle service or whatever else. Just an idea. Riverside Avenue, take a look at it.
She's waving her hands.
Debbie Scher, 6 Pilgrim Road. This is just a shot in the dark. Has anyone approached the Barnes family? They're always so generous to our city. Has anyone, give us a sliver of that little lot over there?
To see if they would give it to the city?
Donate it to the city or give it to us for a song. Just curious.
It's a possibility. Nobody has, right?
I mean, we use that parking all the time for every single event that happens in that area. So maybe they would be okay with doing something, a donation of some kind. They're always generous. Just a thought. I think it's something we need to look at every single possibility, not just assume we can't. I'm so tired of we can't in this city. Please.
Roger, has there been any effort made to contact Barnes Corporation?
I am not directly familiar with that. My understanding is that Barnes Group has been approached in terms of finalizing an agreement, and while they're comfortable with the use of the lot, when it comes to actually putting something to paper, my understanding is that they're very reluctant to do so.
But have we, in fact, in the last few weeks, made an attempt, or at least a contact?
No one from my office has, but I don't know if other entities potentially have.
So who would have that responsibility for us?
Probably either the mayor or the Office of Corporation Counsel. I don't think either of them have been approached to do something like that.
That will be another option, but basically now the way we stand is we have to look at all those options before we give direction. So, and we'll adjourn the meeting at this point.
Jody, is that something that maybe you want to discuss on Tuesday?
Well,
And ask the mayor?
Ask for negotiation with Barnes as a formal action.
Okay.
in terms of your design,
Yeah.
we came up with a number last meeting. We're certainly interested in the cost for the entire phase 1, which I'm sure we're going to go over, expect to go over. What kind of variable could Gilbane work with to come up with a legitimate number from a high to low in terms of capacity?
Are you speaking, Frank, about the effect of the number of seats on budget?
Correct.
Okay. I mean, I would think that would be achievable, right?
It would be, we can further study the schemes at a schematic level, provided that, you know, the main factor is going to be, at this point, is going to be, you know, because you're not driving square footage inside the building. You're mostly driving site improvements associated with the square footage, or I'm sorry, with the seating capacity. So provided that we have, you know, even just these layouts here, we could, you know, look at sort of the worst case scenarios, the most impactful of the parking scenarios, and you know, obviously the increased seating count, I'm sure it comes with an increased toilet fixture count.
Yes.
And stuff like that. So we can look at the schematic parameters of it, both on the high end, and we've already looked at it on the existing end, I believe, with our last schematic estimate. So I mean, we can take a look at it at a high level if the design team is willing to give us sort of the most impactful parking scenario possible. We can certainly.
We can certainly do that, although if it's one that we know isn't going to fly, which would say that taking up some of the ball fields, should we even bother to cost that one? No, probably not.
Mr. Chairman, what is the point of getting another estimate? I thought we were driving to get to a place when all the detail work was done and we could give the city a number that they could count on. You know, we have a lot of estimates flying all over the place.
I agree.
Ask these folks to come up with yet another set of estimates that's going to get out there, and people are going to get all upset because, oh my God, the numbers have changed again. And we have nothing more to back these numbers up than we had with the ones that we already have. I disagree with this approach. I think we should decide what we're going to do. If it takes more time, then we'll take more time. Decide what we're going to do, make a decision, and then have them do some work. Not give us another estimate and waste everybody's time and get other people all upset because more numbers are flying around the city. I disagree. I'm sorry.
Well, my concern is time. You just keep moving. We're probably approaching a point in time when we're going to miss a very good bidding opportunity and a construction season. You know, I know we're chasing this number. I mean, in terms of the remainder of phase one, there shouldn't really be any changes. That's a fixed. That should end up a fairly fixed number. You know, renovating the theater is a fairly fixed number. Chances are we're not going to need a bigger air conditioner or a bigger heating system if there's 100 seats plus or minus.
Right.
It could be 300 or 400. It depends on what the decision.
Well, it depends on.
300 or 400.
I agree. If it's 300 or 400, then that's probably too great.
That's a big difference. So you're trying to make assumptions on top of assumptions. I don't understand what's driving this.
What we have now, though, it's specifically 450 seat. It's the 141 plus the 40 parking. So the parking allow for 540 seats.
540 seats. So that would be, if we decided tonight to go forward, we'd have to go forward with that number because we have no other way, because we don't have these other options to look at. So if we're not going to go forward with a specific number so these guys can do the proper job, and we want to look at these other alternatives, then let's look at them. But let's not look at the alternatives at the same time have them do guesswork. You had enough of that. You know the problems the next class set of numbers caused. Let's not do it again. Let's learn from our mistakes.
I know that the public wants between 750 and 800 seats. Can we give them, the architect, direction to go with 750 seats and then stick with that and have it be our job to then come up with the 69 parking spots that we need? I'll talk to the mayor and the corporation council and talk to Barnes Group. We can look at whatever we need to look at, but I don't want to approve a theater of 540 just because we don't have the parking. I would rather have them go forward on the at least 750 and get the numbers and then deal with the parking when we have to deal with it.
That's another option. I almost agree with that option instead of having them design something like Peter said, that there will be another schematic. Mr. Chairman, I think he wants to talk again. Right.
Mr. Chairman, you may want to actually, at this is a special meeting.
Correct.
Unfortunately, we kind of have to structure this a little differently.
Limit the public
So
participation.
Public participation
Had that.
window kind of closed. I do want to tell you one thing, that it would be a little problematic to go forward and have the architect go ahead and proceed with design documents, and we have something that's constructible, and then have to table it because we did it on a wish and a prayer that we get the parking.
Is that what you call being between the rock and the hard place?
Yeah, we're between a rock and a hard place. Well, I entertain a motion that we delay a decision until we can gather up more parking information, which appears to be the driver for
That's the roadblock.
capacity.
So we've got to try to break the roadblock. And so we've got to take, it looks like we've got to put aside what we're doing until we address that issue specifically, get a definitive answer so we know how many spaces we have to have based on what the regulations are, and then build accordingly. Let's solve that problem first so we know what we're doing. Let's not try to guess at it. Let's just make any assumptions about it. Let's have an answer before we move forward. That makes sense to me.
So, to make a motion to that effect, that we delay going any further, going forward, until such time that we can solve the parking issue.
Parking issue. I'll make that motion.
I second that.
Okay, motion made and seconded to delay any further decisions, until such time as we can rectify the parking situation and therefore determine the size of the theater.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a comment?
Comment period's over.
I'm sorry.
Dawn, it's Dawn Ledger, I think you're familiar with.
Right.
Staff.
Is staff support?
I just wanted to remind you that you're going to have a municipal / private parking garage on Center Square within walking distance of this facility that will be available for the public's use.
If that's the case, though, that's something that we can resolve very quick. You know, we talk to the
If
mayor.
that's a fact.
It is a fact,
If that's
because
a
the
fact.
hospital and the city are going to construct a garage, and part of that is going to be a municipal facility available for the public to use. So I just want, even though most people want to park on the site and be able to get out of their car and walk 50 feet into the building, there will be parking available for people a couple blocks away. That might be enough
But we'll have to find out if that's acceptable
to the
zoning folks.
to
planning
the
folks,
zoning.
whoever.
Exactly. So I just
That's
wanted
acceptable.
to
So that's
put
another
that
option.
out there, that there is an option that is going to be available very close by. Just so that you know that.
So that would be, that'll be the hospital's parking garage,
It will be
a community parking garage?
yes.
Anyone have an idea of how large this?
It will be large.
But that's something that we still have to investigate. though.
Correct.
Right, that's part of this investigation.
Right, and I
Say,
think
oh, well,
that if you have these discussions with the mayor and the development authority, you will get the information that you need.
So you don't know how many spaces it's supposed to be, you just know that it's going to be large.
Right.
And it's going to be...
Some of it will be reserved for the hospital to use during the day,
Yeah.
obviously, and some of it will have use for the public.
Who's going to operate it? The city or the hospital?
Yes.
Well, that makes a difference. That makes a
Absolutely.
difference in terms of what
And
we're
that is
trying to
being
decide.
negotiated between the city and the hospital right now.
Because otherwise we'll end up in a situation like
It's
we
not,
did with Barnes. If it becomes the hospitals,
it will not be entirely the hospitals.
if
So we have a number of...
it may not become, you don't know that for a fact, Dawn, any more than I do. So we have to find out who's going to own it, because otherwise it's possible that we could be in the same situation that we are now in with Barnes, where a written agreement would be required, where if the city had control of it, then that problem goes away.
If the
So we
hospital...
need to understand, we need to know that,
It's-
not guess at it.
Right. It's my understanding that it hasn't been resolved, but the hospital will, whether or not the hospital owns it or the city owns it, the city will have 1 or 2 decks, or, so the city is going to have some ownership of part of it or all of it.
Okay.
So that's being negotiated right now.
So this
That's a great option, we'll definitely explore it.
This may be the answer to our prayers, but it appears to be a number of unanswered questions.
Right, so the
And I
motion
think
is
that
still
So
appropriate.
the motion
that it is
still-
something it's supposed to be resolved in negotiations, I think, within this month. So your answer is forthcoming.
I'm just trying to figure out a way not to put all the brakes on, but if the site can sustain approximately 173 spaces, and you want to have approximately, give us a little wiggle room of...
Plus Willis.
Oh, plus Willis.
Plus Willis is 40, right? So
Well,
181?
we were shown 32 because we had to take out some of the spots that the city engineer had laid out, because we have that loading dock there now that didn't exist when they did their layout. So we lost some spots there to get the truck in and out.
But just to pursue the point, if we are in the vicinity of 173 on-site with a target of 750 seats, we maybe have a delta or shortfall of 50, 60 parking places. And it certainly seems in today's world that there's ways to work out a parking strategy or a parking plan that allows for some level of off-street parking. And certainly whether, like at the Hartford Bushnell, a lot of seniors come by bus from wherever. There's valet parking. There might be a garage opportunity. There seems like you could then approach the city with a hopefully well-conceived strategy to plug that number, whether it's 50 or 60, but I think it's in that window that would allow us in fairly short order to proceed with a theater plan for 750 seats.
We think we're going to have this, especially with the situation that Dawn pointed out, with the garage well underway, the negotiations. We should probably be able to get an answer fairly quickly. But we need an answer first.
Yeah, agreed.
We need an answer first.
Agreed, and hopefully that could be in short order. Just to clarify, with that seat number, are you accepting the reality of the existing seat size? And no modification?
Last month, we voted to go with the larger seats wherever possible.
Right.
So
That gets down to the 6.
Correct.
that takes it down.
Correct.
But
But we're still short parking.
I wouldn't be in favor of 640 seats. I want it between 750 and 800.
So with doing a little mix and match,
We could hit 750.
Right.
They won't all be wide seats.
Correct.
some will be maybe you pick the premier seats in the
Right.
lower
Correct.
orchestra, and the rest will stay the same.
Correct, and that was one of the
Okay.
schematics we had looked at. You know,
So if
if we're at 750 seats, all right, then we need
15, 250.
250.
250 stalls.
Yeah.
So-
We got 100.
We're up to your short
77.
number.
Okay.
Right.
And that's assuming non-simultaneous occupancy, so that the
Right.
events in the theater do not take place during
Correct.
the day.
Right.
So
But
it seems
I
like...
think- I think we'd have to clarify that, because I think the folks from the nonprofit are planning on a lot of things going on during the day. So I don't think we can say categorically that this theater is only going to operate in the evenings and on
Correct.
weekends. that there's not going to be any other activities, that we couldn't do that.
There are matinees at the theater.
So that may have an impact. I'm not raising obstacles, I'm just trying to be realistic here in what things that I've been told.
Yep.
So we're not making an assumption that turns out to be wrong, and then we have an even a bigger problem when we're ready to start construction. So he says, no, you can't do that, you don't have enough parking.
We have a motion on the floor, maybe a second, to delay any further action until we get some resolution of the parking. Any comments? Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman, I will speak to the mayor about the parking garage and talk to the Barnes Group and see what can be done.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. So moved. All right, so unfortunately, you're in a holding pattern.
Yeah, in the meantime, though, Frank, we can help you with this
Correct.
issue. So we're happy to attend any meetings with the mayor or planning, or we'll bring our site designer, whatever can move that decision along.
Because we're talking about trying to manage the shortfall, and there's several ways to skin that cat. I mean, I think you could make a case that there's some level that are likely to come by valet or bus or what have you, and I think in today's world, you're always managing parking when you have these venues. I think the person who spoke, oftentimes people will find a place even if they have to...
Well, and that's true. Unfortunately, I guess zoning doesn't allow for just people finding places.
Right.
However, personally, I still would like to investigate or have investigated further parking on the boulevard. When the school was a school and there was graduation, I mean, the boulevard was full of cars, parked cars. So, I mean, there's a lot of room there. Those roads are very wide and certainly go into one lane now.
Right, but as Roger pointed out, the reason we're going to one lane is to make it bike lanes. So now you're going to park in the bike lanes?
On event nights.
On certain nights, right, bike lane is closed.
Well, if you can sell that, Frank, be my guest. That's going to solve the problem.
Yeah, well, there's still a lot to do.
Okay, moving on. Phase 1, the remainder of Phase 1.
You're looking for a description of scope of work in Phase 1?
Correct.
Okay, all right. Go back to the drawings then. So the Phase 1 work, and let's just use, let's see, let's use this scheme. The Phase 1 work is in the basement, no work other than the work required to get the elevator in to serve the theater. So basically, no work. First floor, everything you see on the first floor here gets renovated to a so-called white box level, ready to rent. And handicapped accessibility is provided by the wheelchair lift you see there. So you come in, you go into this vestibule and up. So we get accessibility to the first floor, which then gets you to the existing elevator, which gets refurbished in the Phase 1 work. And the 2 toilet rooms get refurbished to make them code compliant for handicapped accessibility. It does include all the theater renovations on this level, including the theater and men's and women's toilets room. So first floor is basically done. Second floor, only the theater. Third floor, only the theater. In terms of architecturals, in terms of mechanicals, everything on the first floor works. It's heated, it's cooled, it's lit, it's powered. On the other floors, for the sprinkler system, the standpipe runs up to that floor and it's capped. And then at the time that floor gets renovated, the new sprinkler system goes in. Same thing with the RF mechanical system, electrical. So everything else is ready to be renovated, but not occupiable until Phase 2. Does that cover it? Oh, and in terms of site...
let's stay with the mechanicals.
Okay.
The electrical service will be new
Yes.
and able to handle the entire building.
Correct.
New gas main,
Correct.
able to handle the entire building.
Yep.
A generator,
Not sure about the generator.
I mean, is a generator required for the theater?
I believe what you had costed in there was for a generator, but it
It
wasn't in, it was a 300 kW generator, I think.
All right. But yes, all new services.
Now, what about security?
Security,
Will there be a security system which will be expandable to the remainder of the building? Certainly, I
think
know
so,
that was
because-
on the list.
Yeah, I don't have the fine detail of that budget, and I'm not sure.
Another would be a building management system. Would
Yes.
that would be
Yes.
expandable to the remainder of the building?
Right, for
Put
the
that-
mechanicals, yes.
Correct.
Yes, yes.
Correct.
Heating, air conditioning, lighting. Right.
And of course, there was the dewatering system for the building, which I know was also included.
Right, right. But existing windows remain.
Correct, correct. So in terms of fit and finish, it'll be
Yeah, first floor is done.
cleaned up,
Right.
ready to occupy.
Right.
But, excuse me, it's sort of white box.
Right.
If a tenant comes in and wants things that are other than just raw space, that's a tenant fit out.
Correct.
Right.
So, I mean, it's what we're calling kind of a white box, if I'm correct.
Correct. So
So the
now,
classrooms are going to look like they do now? That like they look like
On the
classrooms?
upper floors, yes.
No, on the first floor.
First floor, yes.
Same spatially.
Yeah, spatially they'll be the same. Right. Right. And, in terms of things like,
Oh,
when we did our walkthrough, there was a lot of interest expressed in things like the old bookshelves and some blackboards, so we can leave those in place.
And I do have to add, there was some level, if you remember, of abatement that goes on throughout. And
correct, a large level of
large
abatement.
level, and those were numbers that were secured by the city.
Correct.
And have that formula, light, heavy.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. But yeah, abatement, of course, just to work in there. All right, now do we have a agreed to understanding of what the deliverable is? Because I know you talk to 10 different people in town and you get 11 different ideas, and that's what I want to overcome.
Well, I guess the other thing that's can be problematic is the level of technology and audio theater equipment. We're carrying a sort of an allowance for that, but and it has some assumptions, but a lot of it was based on the premise that it's probably not all the bells and whistles you're going to want for all your performances, that something, we'll put the infrastructure in there, there'll be some basic lighting. Can you help me on that?
Yeah.
And but we don't want to suggest that it's all done for the highest end performance and technological needs.
As long as there's room for upgrade. I think.
There's room
Yes.
for the infrastructure.
Or rental equipment.
Yes, a lot of it is based on the notion of rental.
Or the shows bring in their own.
Correct.
Right.
That's very, very common. I think we have an understanding of that.
Okay, I have a question before we depart. Who is going to be responsible for, or be in charge of this task of finding out about the parking spaces? Who's going, in other words, who's the person who's going to be tasked with leading a group or several people or whatever, so that when we meet in a month, we could say, Jody, where does this thing stand? If it's Jody, or if it's you, or if it's Jake, or whoever it is. Who is responsible, so that, we don't come back and say, well, this guy was supposed to do this, and that person was going to do that, and I'm not sure this happened. I don't think we want any of that. I think we want somebody responsible to this committee who's going to come back in a month and say, okay, we looked at all these options, and these are the ones that are realistic, and this is what we're going to pursue. Or things are so, we can sign an agreement with the city as soon as we can, because there's going to be that garage, and somebody has to be in charge of that, right?
Any suggestion, Roger?
I would say the project manager should do that.
Project manager. Well, we have a volunteer project manager.
I will provide whatever assistance Jody would need in terms of starting a dialogue with the mayor's office so that then we can begin to try and pull together things.
Well, I don't know if we could be helpful on that end in terms of, to me, and correct me if this is misguided, to suggest a solution, that we've got 171 spaces, we need another 70, we think they site parking, some valet, I think you ought to have a proposal as a starting point.
Right, but somebody's got to take that suggestion of yours and present it to somebody,
right,
get an answer, and come back to this committee in a month and say, we took these suggestions, we talked to these people, we got agreement, or we didn't get agreement. That's all I'm saying. Somebody has to be put in charge of doing these things. I mean, they're great, we get a lot of good suggestions, but somebody has got to say, okay, I'll be responsible for making sure all of these.
So Roger, did I hear you volunteer?
You did not hear me volunteer to be project manager.
No, I know, just associate project manager.
Well, you heard me volunteer.
With
Yes,
Jody's help.
I would provide assistance to begin dialogue with the mayor's office to either come up with a mechanism to establish an agreement with the Barnes Group or to provide some type of method of distribution via shuttle service.
Very good. And we can get you all the data that will be helpful in that situation in terms of, here's number of seats, here's the business use, here's the calculation of apartments, and here are some strategies we could assist with getting data.
If I can, Mr. Chairman, if I can just bring it back to when we were talking about the first floor again. I think it might be prudent, and I think it might be helpful for your work as a committee if you understand the means of egress for coming into the main building. And maybe, Ken, can you just tell us a little bit? Because I think you said that you're planning to have a lift in the front area, but does that mean you're changing the grading so that when you walk in through the front, you'll walk in directly onto the first floor? Or
you would walk in, it's the similar strategy that we're doing in the theater. So yes, we're changing the floor of those porches or logos outside the doors by so raising the floor so that architecturally it's not a big difference, and then ramping sidewalks up to them so that both at the main entrance to the building and the theater entrance, you'll come up a sloped walk onto the porch, enter at landing elevation, take a left or right, depending on which entrance you're coming in, and get into an elevator or lift to get you up to the next main level or down to the next main level. So that's how it works. So in the main part of the building, you get up the half level from where you enter to the main floor in the lift, and then you go down the corridor to get into the elevator to access any other floors. In the theater, same thing. You come in, you take a left, you get in that elevator, and that gets you to all floors in the theater.
Which then brings us to site plans. Do we have any more to say?
I'm sorry, site what?
The site plans.
Yeah. The other thing I think in the costing of the site, I think, and Carrie, I'm not sure if you know this, this is what Eric said, is that the initial plan was to concentrate the site work around the parking required from the theater side of the building and to get the walkways in up to the main entrance and to the theater, but very little work was being done on the other side of the building, on the left and top side. So it was almost like the right half of the site is being developed as part of the phase one work, but the left-hand site is for future. Does that sound right to you? Or you
yes.
Not? Yes, okay. So I just want to make sure you understand that too, that included in their budget is not full site development.
Is that what I recall, or could I recall the entire site is included in phase one?
The entire site is included in phase one.
Well, there was an estimate, preliminary estimate until, but that was for the entire site. And you're saying now that a third or two-thirds will be
Yeah.
done under this phase one?
I think about half of it is in the budget presently. And that was based, remember the original schematic when they were colored diagrams that showed extent of renovation?
Correct.
The extent of renovation on the site, the right-hand half was shown intensely renovated because we knew we had to regrade to get handicapped accessibility. The left-hand side, less so. So it's not that nothing is going on there, but it's less renovated. It's not complete reconfiguration as it is on the right-hand side.
You know, just honestly, just occurred to me, when we're talking about parking, with phases 2 and 3, our parking requirements are going to increase for the building.
For the building, correct.
For the building. So I know we don't have to deal with it necessarily now, but we've got to think about whatever solution we come up with. You know, we don't want to end up with a building where we can't complete at least 2 and 3 because we can't get parking.
Well, yeah, parking hasn't
So
been fully
I'm not sure how to
completed.
You know what I'm saying? We're doing the first phase of the building. We know that there's going to be phases 2 and 3. We know there's going to be office space in those 2 floors, and then we know there's going to be some additional parking requirement. So we've got to not only think about getting the extra 60 spaces that we need for phase 1, but we kind of have to have in the back of our mind, you know, about these other 2, because we can't. Otherwise, we could build a first floor and not be able to build the rest of the building.
I think that's...
Mr. Chair,
For the same. Am I making sense?
Mr. Chair, maybe I can tell you a little bit that when we did meet with the city planner, although he didn't formally accept it, I think he acknowledges that there will be 2 very different uses between the theater and the remainder of the building.
Right.
And that the theater has a much higher intensity in terms of population, that the balance of the building would not have that level of intensity of requirement. So,
so the question would be...
it would never rise to the level that there would be the need to have another 800 people that would be in the building.
No, but the question would be, when it's fully occupied, 3 floors, as office space, how many spaces would that be?
And that we did calculate, and it's 227.
227.
For full fit out,
Full.
for office use.
Okay, so...
Plus theater. And that's where that simultaneous occupancy issue came up.
Okay, so when the building is fully completed, you're going to require 227 for the office portion of the 3 floors.
Right.
So we don't even have enough space if it was just office.
If it was just that, right.
Okay.
Right.
But anyway, beyond that, so the site plan, doing a half or 2/3 of the site, to me, doesn't make sense. I mean, phase 1, my memory is correct, included having the site done for the remainder of phase 2 and 3.
Yeah, I think that those initial diagrams though were, when the budget was at around $8 million. And that it was recognized that you're not going to be able to afford to do really do the whole site. You can do, what needs to be done in terms of grading and providing handicapped access along the theater side, and the other side is going to be repair and restriping and all that, but not the same intense degree.
Okay, so
it's not that it was left untouched. It was
upgraded.
Light development.
Right. All right. It's going to be upgraded.
Treatment.
All right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
No drainage revisions and stuff like that. It's purely an aesthetic or as we consider a light touch on that side.
Any other questions? Do you gentlemen have any questions for us?
I guess just as I said, we're happy to pull together the data you'll need for the city to work with neighbors and mayor to try to help that process along.
Okay.
Certainly appreciate that because time just continues to go by. I for one want to get moving here. Next agenda item, project update by staff. Are there any?
I don't have anything else that I can share with you other than we've already shared, that we've been coordinating dialogue between the chief building official and the fire marshal and the city planner to make sure that the construction manager and the architect and their sub-consultants have enough information to bring things forward to you.
Okay. Memorial Boulevard Cultural Center, Marie emailed me and did advise me that she wasn't able to make today's meeting, but she also, in her email, and I'll just read this, at this point, the MBCC board is waiting for further clarity regarding the possible relocation of City Hall to the Memorial Boulevard School. So they've sort of discontinued their activity until some decision is made on that subject, which really doesn't involve the building committee. With that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. Any comments? None heard. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. So moved. Thank you, everyone.